Research case study presentation by Gabrielle Green. New York Times versus Sullivan. L.B. Sullivan, the plaintiff, sued the defendant, New York Times Company, for printing an advertisement about civil rights movement in the South that defamed the plaintiff, L.B. Sullivan. Who are the parties to the case and what facts led to their dispute? The facts that led to their dispute is that the respondent and plaintiff, L.B. Sullivan, claimed he was defamed in a full-page ad by the New York Times. The respondent and plaintiff, L.B. Sullivan, claims that the ad referred to him indirectly because he had to oversee responsibilities of the police. The defendants, New York Times, claims that it is puzzled by the respondent's claims and the defendant's claim that they did not feel that the ad was malicious or included information that defamed the respondent, L.B. Sullivan. Why did Sullivan feel his reputation was damaged by the New York Times publication? L.B. Sullivan felt his reputation was damaged by the New York Times publication because at the time he was one of the 3 elected commissioners of the city of Montgomery, Alabama, and during his role as commissioner, he had duties of supervision of the police department. Statements made in the publication about the police department claimed that there was, quote, police action allegedly directed against students who participated in a civil rights demonstration and against a leader of the civil rights movement. These statements made Sullivan feel that the publication indirectly referenced him because of his involvement with the police, even though he was not directly referenced by name. Sullivan proceeded to reference statements made throughout the publication, even in the 3rd and the 6th paragraphs, that he felt indirectly referenced him in the article. What are the elements of defamation, libel? Since Sullivan was a public official, what did the plaintiff have to prove in this case? The elements of defamation, libel are, quote, factual error, content defamatory of official reputation, or both, are insufficient to warrant an award of damages for false statements unless, quote, actual malice, knowledge that statements are false or in reckless disregard of the truth, and is alleged and proved. The plaintiff, Sullivan, had to prove that the statements made in the publication by the New York Times were in fact made with actual malice, with knowledge that it was false, or with reckless disregard of whether or not it was false. What was the U.S. Supreme Court decision, and why did it make the decision? The U.S. Supreme Court's decision was to reverse the judgment of the Supreme Court of Alabama and for the case to be remanded. The U.S. Supreme Court made this decision because, according to the court documents, the U.S. Supreme Court saw, quote, that there was no other evidence to connect the statements with the respondent, Sullivan, and the evidence was constitutionally insufficient to support a finding that the statements referred to the respondent. Gertz versus Robert Welch, Inc. Magazine owned by Robert Welch attacked the reputation of an attorney, Elmer Gertz, by publishing false accusation and attacks his character. Who are the parties to this case? Was the petitioner a private person or a public figure? The parties in this case are Elmer Gertz, a reputable attorney that represented the Nelson family in civil litigation against Nuccio, and Robert Welch, a publisher for American Opinion magazine. In this case, Elmer Gertz is the petitioner and Robert Welch is the respondent. The petitioner, Elmer Gertz, was a private person, not a public figure, according to the court documents. What were the alleged defamatory statements about Gertz in the American Opinion article? The alleged defamatory statements about Gertz in the American Opinion article were that the petitioner had arranged Nuccio's frame-up, portraying the petitioner as, quote, an architect of the frame-up, and implied that the petitioner had a criminal record and labeled him, quote, a communist fronter. Respondent also claimed that the petitioner had been an official of the Marxist League for the Industrial Democracy, originally known as the Intercollegiate Socialist Society. What was done to confirm the accuracy of these allegations against Gertz? Gertz made no effort to verify or substantiate the changes against the petitioner according to the court documents. He appended an editorial introduction stating that the author had, quote, conducted extensive research into the Richard Nuccio case, and he included in the article a photograph of the petitioner and wrote, quote, Elmer Gertz of Red Guild harasses Nuccio. Respondents placed issue on newsstands and issued reprints in Chicago. How do you think these allegations affected Gertz's reputation? I think these allegations affected Gertz's reputation to some degree. I think there will always be people who are cautious and will believe everything they read. Because of these allegations made against Gertz, there may be some people out there that will not want to work with Gertz or hire him as an attorney. But there are also people who know of Gertz and trust his work, so those people may not look at him differently. It is a double-edged sword because people are always going to judge and cast their own opinions regardless of what is fact and non-factual. Overall, I think Gertz's reputation was affected to some degree, but I don't think his reputation was permanently tarnished. If anything, the reputation of Welch and the magazine may have been tarnished to some degree as well. What would you have done differently than Welch to avoid the lawsuit? If I was Welch, I would have definitely taken the time out to make the effort to verify the statements that they were published and made sure there was 100% accuracy. I think if he would have verified the information before publishing the article, I think he could have avoided the lawsuit. I also think he should have interviewed or spoke with Gertz himself for authenticity and accuracy behind his statements. Also, I think if Welch would have interviewed Gertz, he could have had Gertz sign an interview release form if he sensed or was informed that Gertz may have been offended by anything that was going to be published in the article. Welch should have been honest from the beginning and used proper journalism procedure to avoid any conflict, especially a lawsuit. What is your state's defamation law? My state is Ohio, and Ohio state law on defamation states, quote, Ohio defines the term as any statement that reflects upon the character of the plaintiff by bringing him into ridicule, hatred, or contempt, or affects him injuriously in his trade or profession. A statement can constitute defamation per se only if it conveys its negative meaning directly, not by innuendo or implication. In defining all-purpose and limited-purpose publication figures, Ohio court follows the Gertz versus Robert Welch, Inc. case, and all-purpose public figures are those who have achieved pervasive fame and influence. Examples include celebrities, professional athletes, and similar famous people. How can you relate what you learned from the Sullivan-Gertz cases to your future work in the communications industry? I can relate what I learned from the Sullivan and Gertz cases to my future work in the communications industry by being honest and using my morals and ethics and always doing the right thing. I want to be a journalist that people can rely on and relate to, a journalist people can trust and respect. I would never want to put myself in a position where I risk my career and reputation based off something I wrote or produced. Reading these cases was very eye-opening for me. It made me realize that even though some journalists and publishers may not have intentionally tried to defame or cause conflict to anyone, it is so easy to make mistakes, and if you try to take a shortcut in any form of journalism, it may cost you your career and reputation. It also showed me how important it is to know your audience and be severely cautious on what you write and who you reference, because you never know who you may offend or who is out there to destroy your work and credibility as a journalist. Overall, it just made me more aware and taught me that accuracy is extremely important and that the audience is so powerful that it can help your career and reputation or it can destroy it.